leaders meet to talk about combating climate change in Copenhagen. Some people say that population control is, at the end of the day, the only real way to fight it. The Chinese instituted a policy limiting the number of children each family can have 30 years ago. And they claim that since that time, they have prevented 400 million births and saved carbon emissions to the tune of 18 million tons a year. In the Canadian newspaper, the Financial Post, suggesting the real inconvenient truth is that humans are overpopulating the world. It suggests every nation should adopt China's one-child policy, because if we don't control the Earth's population, we will eventually destroy or run out of everything, from other species to vegetation, resources, the atmosphere, oceans, water supply, and it doesn't matter whether the globe heats up or doesn't. The piece points out that despite China's dirty coal plants, it is a world leader in creating policy to combat the destruction of the environment. One study shows, this is interesting, that if from now on, starting today, every woman had only one child, the world's population would actually decline from 6.5 billion now to 5.5 billion by 2050. But if we do nothing, the population could soar to an unsustainable 9 billion people. It's too many people, especially in New York.
In 1979, I became the first American social scientist allowed to go to the People's Republic of China and do research. The people of China are, for the most part, limited to one child. The government of China declares women who are pregnant to be carrying illegal children. It arrests them for the crime of being pregnant, and it forcibly aborts them. I was present when women 7, 8, and 9 months pregnant were forced to lay down on the operating table. And in some cases, they had to be held down while they were given lethal injections into the womb to kill their unborn child. This is not ancient history. This policy that I witnessed enforced in 1980 continues to the present day.
The myth of overpopulation originated in England in 1798, when a vicar named Thomas Malthus, who fancied himself something of a mathematician, saw that food production increased incrementally, but people reproduced exponentially. He sat down and did some simple math, and summarily decided that the world would be out of food by 1890. He blamed reduced mortality rates, and recommended killing off the have-nots of society, lest the haves starve to death. This cry was taken up by Paul Ehrlich of Stanford University in 1968, who claimed that reckless human reproduction had overwhelmed the Earth. Massive famines would result, which would destroy, best-case scenario, 1/5 of humanity by the end of the 70s. And the planet would follow. This fear produced large donations for the newly created UNFPA, which thrives on an imagined crisis that has been both imminent and rescheduled again and again over the past 2 centuries. The truth of the matter is that every family on this planet could have a house with a yard and all live together on a landmass the size of Texas, which is really just a small corner of the planet. The population of Earth will peak in 30 years and then start to go back down. We're not overpopulated. Do the math.
The mathematics on this video are relevant. I've done the math. Saying hypothetically, if there were 7 billion people and we needed hypothetically and illegitimately to have 7 billion homes, that babies would be living in their own home, and considering that there would need to be 7 billion homes with a 1,000 square foot radius. There's enough space.
And all live together on a landmass the size of Texas.
And to consider the fact that we could actually make huge towers of metropolis cities that connect one city from the next. Considering the fact that cold fusion is on the horizon and it's now validated, and we have automated construction technology coupled with automated agricultural tower construction capability, and tripled with the fact that we can take all of our waste and turn it into construction or into fuel. The idea of overpopulation is not as frightening as it's been portrayed. And I have mathematical and technological premise.
If present growth rates continue, our population will double in about 50 years. Yet the Earth's size remains the same. Slowing human population growth and lowering our consumption of natural resources is key to reducing the impact we have on our planet.
scientists have figured out how many people need to be born each generation to replace the generation before. That number is 1 person per person. All things being equal, this creates perfect demographic balance. Since women are the only ones who can have children, replacing every person on Earth means each woman needs to have 2 children, one to replace her, and the other to replace the man, who cannot have children. The total fertility rate is the average number of children each woman in a society is having. This number shows us if a society is growing or shrinking. In developed countries, the replacement rate birth rate is 2.1 children per woman. This will keep the population stable, but even that is assuming that every woman has children, and that there are no wars, famines, or disease. In the real world, disasters happen all the time, and sadly not all children reach adulthood, especially in poor countries. This pushes their replacement rate up to 3.3 children per woman. Since not every woman wants to have children, in order to keep the population stable, some women need to have more than 2.1 children, to balance the birth rate with the women who are only having 1, or no children at all. This is already happening all over the developed world. Many of the world's nations are only barely replacing themselves, while a growing majority have birth rates below replacement, some as low as 1.8 or even 1.2 babies per woman.
And Sam says, this is the most ignorant question I've ever seen. All right, Sam. Maybe we'll get you next hour.